I never imagined that a single meeting with my boss would change everything. It started like any other day in the sleek glass tower where I worked as a junior financial analyst. The job was nothing special, long hours, demanding deadlines, and barely enough pay to cover my bills. So when Mr. Calloway, the CEO himself, summoned me to his office, I expected a reprimand.
Or worse, a layoff.
His office was a monument to power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, and an air of quiet authority clung to the space like perfume. He sat behind an immaculate mahogany desk, his eyes unreadable as he gestured for me to sit. "I have a proposition," he said, steepling his fingers. A cold weight settled in my gut.
Proposition?
That word never meant anything good. "I need someone to date my son." I almost laughed, but his expression remained impassive.
Excuse me?
I asked, unsure if I'd misheard.
Ryan, he clarified. He's been distant.
Ever since his last breakup, he's closed himself off. I need him to move on. I hesitated, 1,000 thoughts colliding. This had to be a joke.
Or a test.
But Mr. Calloway wasn't the type to joke.
"And you want me to?"
"I want you to be his boyfriend," he said bluntly. "At least for a little while." Shock ricocheted through me. His boyfriend? I wasn't even out at work.
"Why me?"
I finally managed. "You're close in age, charming enough, and most importantly," he leaned forward, voice low, "you need the money."
My breath caught.
That last part stung.
He wasn't wrong.
My bank account barely survived the month.
Student loans. Rent.
Bills that piled up like a slow avalanche. As if reading my thoughts, Mr. Calloway slid a check across the desk. 5,000 now. 5,000 more after a month. I stared at the number. $10,000. A lifeline disguised as a contract. "All you have to do is go on dates," he continued.
"Keep him company.
"Make him happy." It sounded simple.
Too simple.
I swallowed, my mouth dry. "And if he finds out?" A flicker of something, warning, crossed his face.
"He won't."
The room felt too small, the air too thick. A moral tug-of-war raged inside me. Deception wasn't in my nature. But neither was starving. I exhaled slowly.
"Fine."
A smirk ghosted across his lips as he slid the check closer.
"Good.
"You'll meet him this Friday." As I stepped out of his office, check clutched in shaking fingers, a single thought lingered. What the hell have I just done? The plan was simple: meet Ryan, charm him, and collect my paycheck.
Keep it professional. Keep it fake. Then I saw him.
Ryan Calloway was nothing like I expected. Not the spoiled, arrogant heir to his father's empire.
Not cold or detached. Instead, he was human.
Messy curls framed his sharp features, and his ocean blue eyes held a quiet kind of sadness. "So, my father sent you." His voice was flat, but not unkind.
I stiffened. Did he know?
"For dinner," I covered quickly. "He said you could use some company." A flicker of amusement, just for a second, then it was gone. "That sounds like him." He led me inside the cafe, his movements effortless, like he belonged anywhere and nowhere at once. We ordered coffee, sat by the window, and for the first time, I truly saw him. Ryan wasn't withdrawn, he was guarded. He spoke carefully, like every word had been weighed before it left his lips. But there were moments, little cracks in the armor, the way his fingers lingered on the rim of his cup when he talked about photography, the rare but breathtaking curve of his smile. Somewhere between caffeine refills and a shared dessert, I forgot why I was there. "So, what's your deal?" he asked, resting his chin on his hand.
I hesitated.
Lying was easy, but something about him made me want to be real.
"I work for your father.
Finance department. Figures."
He sighed.
"He only ever sends people who owe him something."
A stab of guilt. He wasn't wrong.
Still, the evening stretched on, and when Ryan finally laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and bright, I felt something shift. That was not part of the plan. The days blurred into weeks. Movies, late-night drives, deep talks under city lights. He opened up in pieces. His love for old music, his distrust of his father, the way the world felt heavier on some days. And somewhere along the way, the lie became harder to carry. Because I wasn't acting anymore. One night, we sat on his apartment rooftop, the city sprawling beneath us. The air smelled like rain, and for once, Ryan looked at peace.
Then he turned to me.
This feels real, doesn't it? The question knocked the air from my lungs. I could have said yes. Should have said yes. But the truth sat between us, silent and suffocating.
Instead, I just smiled. Yeah, it does.
And for the first time I wished, desperately wished, it was. But wishes don't erase lies. And I knew sooner or later, Ryan would find out. Lies have a way of unraveling, no matter how tightly you try to hold them together. It happened on an ordinary evening, one of our evenings. Ryan and I had fallen into an easy rhythm, dinner at his place, music humming in the background, conversation flowing effortlessly.
It felt real. It was real. Until his phone rang.
I didn't think much of it at first. He stepped away, murmuring something to the caller. But when he returned, his face was different. His easy warmth had vanished, replaced by something sharp, something unreadable. Who told you to date me? Every muscle in my body locked.
What?
I forced a laugh. Ryan, what are you talking about?
Don't.
His voice was low, controlled, but I could see the storm building beneath. I just got off the phone with my father.
My stomach dropped.
He told me everything. A cold weight pressed against my ribs. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Ryan let out a breath, shaky, uneven. So it was all a lie?
No.
I mean, yes at first, but... He flinched, like I had physically struck him.
So what?
You were just cashing a paycheck every time we went out? Every time you kissed me?
His voice cracked.
Was any of it real?
I swallowed hard.
You have to believe me. It started that way, but... But what? His eyes burned with something between fury and devastation. You changed your mind? Decided somewhere along the way that maybe I was worth more than the money. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Then, softer this time, he whispered, I loved you. The words hit harder than any accusation ever could.
I took a step forward. Ryan, please.
Just let me explain. He shook his head, stepping back.
Away from me. Away from us.
You already did. Then he turned and walked out the door, leaving behind nothing but the wreckage of what could have been.
I didn't chase him. I couldn't.
Because in that moment, I knew, I had lost him. And maybe I deserved to.
Regret is a slow poison.
It lingers, seeps into your bones, and refuses to let go.
Days passed. Then weeks. Ryan didn't call. He didn't text. He was gone.
And I was left to sift through the wreckage of my own making.
The money sat untouched in my account.
It felt dirty now, like a debt I could never repay. My job was gone too, Mr. Calloway had made sure of that. But none of it mattered.
Not the job. Not the money. Only him. I had to see him.
Even if it was too late. It took me days to find the courage, but finally, I stood outside his apartment, heart pounding like a war drum.
I knocked once. Then again. No answer.
Just as I was about to turn away, the door opened. Ryan stood there, his face unreadable. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. The warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by something harder, something guarded. What are you doing here? His voice was quieter than I expected. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I had to see you.
Why?
He folded his arms. Haven't you done enough? I exhaled sharply.
You're right.
I hurt you. And I don't deserve forgiveness. But, I hesitated, then forced myself to keep going. But it wasn't just a job for me. Not in the end. Ryan let out a hollow laugh. You expect me to believe that?
No. I met his gaze.
But I needed you to hear it anyway. Silence stretched between us. My heart pounded as I waited for him to say something, anything. Finally he sighed. You broke my trust.
I know.
My voice was barely a whisper.
Another pause.
Then, softer this time, so why are you here?
I took a breath.
Because I love you. His expression flickered. Shock, hesitation, something else I couldn't name.
I stepped closer.
I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed you to know that what I felt, what I feel, is real. Ryan studied me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a glimpse of the man I had fallen for. Then, finally, he spoke. I don't know if I can trust you again.
I nodded.
Then let me earn it. Another silence, stretching between us like a fragile thread.
Then, a small hesitant nod. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a perfect ending. But it was a chance.
And for now, that was enough.